Welcome to the Voices of a Stranger podcast. Here is your host, Reza Garajadaki.
Hey everybody, and welcome to another episode of The Voices of a Stranger. I'm your host, Reza Garajadaki, and I'm super excited today because we have another wonderful guest with an incredible story of survival and really a really good person that I've known for a few years, my friend Tristan, who I met through the Liverpool Football Club here in San Diego. We get up at 6 a.m. and go to the pub and sing songs, and he mentioned to me a few times about his life. And when I started this podcast, I texted him and said, "Hey, buddy, you got to come on my podcast." Very early on when I started, so he's a great guy, and he's going to tell us his story. So first of all, hi Tristan, thanks for being here today.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for having me.
All right, very good. Well, listen, as I always tell my listeners, The Voice of a Stranger is a platform to give people an opportunity to talk about incredible things that have happened in their lives and how they have overcome them. And based on all the things that you do, I think our audience is going to love hearing about what you dealt with and how you overcome it. So I'm going to stop talking. I'm going to give you the baton. The floor is yours. So tell us your story and why you are here today as a voice of a stranger.
All right. So I want to tell my story in the metaphor of an iceberg because, first of all, it's a very popular YouTube format being used right now. But I think there's the story that most people know, that my friends and what I kind of post on social media that are like the big bullet points. But there's a lot of stuff under the surface that kind of contributed to that I'll go in detail as we go along. So
Sure.
Let's start at the tip, which is where I'm at now. I'm a full-time yoga teacher and massage therapist here in San Diego. Yoga, I specialize in vinyasa, restore, yin. I also do sound healing and teach sculpt, primarily at the Yoga 6 in Liberty Station in Point Loma, as well as a studio named the Yoga Deck in Bankers Hill near Balboa Park. And I'm also a massage therapist. I do a mobile massage service serving Greater San Diego that's getting off the ground. It's going really well. And I also massage at the spa at the Hilton next to the convention center.
Oh, nice.
So, and my other big thing, my big passion is jiu-jitsu. Been training roughly 5 years. I'm a blue belt. I've been at the gym I'm at currently for about a year now, Legion American Jiu-Jitsu, located in Miramar Road. And I decided to start competing consistently again when I rejoined that gym. I've done 3 tournaments since, I think 8 overall. I'm competing next April, May, June, and then getting ready to do the World Championships for Masters, which is the older age group in August in Las Vegas. So it's kind of a season leading up to that. So moving into the surface and the kind of the story that everyone knows. I'm a double testicular cancer survivor. The first time was in 2006. I was 23 years old, and it was my senior year of college. And my left testicle had grown basically to the size of a cue ball. And I had known, and I'd kind of realized something was there. And around that time, Lance Armstrong started winning bicycle races, find out nefariously. And the term, testicular cancer was out there. So I kind of figured that might be what it is. But much like him, I waited a while, and it wasn't until like 6 months that I got it checked. And I was actually diagnosed the day before my 23rd birthday in December. And I had to go home and tell this first to my mom. And at the time, I was in a really bad place mentally. I was 80 pounds heavier, and I was in a fraternity, and it really wasn't a positive experience for me. I really want to be accountable now because I believe that my story for the longest time was I blamed them for how they treated me. But now I think enough time has passed where I can honestly say that I had the wrong mindset. I kind of was stuck in my own head, and that this version of me now knows better. So I know what I could have done to, prevent a lot of that stuff from happening, or I wouldn't have been in that situation in the first place. And I don't regret the experience. I still made some amazing friends that I'm still close with to this day. But fact of the matter is, my mindset, kind of the party scene at San Diego State, and my background before college, I just really wasn't prepared for that environment, even though thinking that's what you do when you go to college, especially
Sure.
when you go to a party school.
Yep.
And there was this feeling, especially because I was overweight and I didn't know how to really frame that. And I was very self conscious about it, that I was in this party that was going on all the time, but I was kind of alone in it and I really wasn't a part of it.
Sure.
So there was this added stress, and it was my senior year. So it was this feeling of it had been this way the whole time. And coupled with my dietary choices, I think just health wise, and later as I became a yogi, when I learned about kind of energy and how that flows and where there might be blockages, I do kind of see how my life style contributed to all of that, the stress I put on myself.
Sure.
And it leads to the bigger lesson that I'm going to keep coming back to, of finally just learning how to get out of your own way. So I had to break it to my mom and to my brother, who had just gotten out of prison. We had just kind of reformed our connection, our relationship. And thankfully, because of what Lance Armstrong had done, he had advanced testicular cancer research and treatment by years. And basically, urologists said, if this had been 5 years ago, your chances would have been very 50-50, if not 40-60. Now you're like 70-30, 80-20. So I got very lucky in terms of the timing. And as you'll find out, the age range for testicular cancer is 18 to 35. So I got it at the beginning and at the end. So this was also trying to graduate, the stress of that. And I went through the procedure, had it removed. I had to rest out for a week, which was weird for me because I just don't like sitting there. Mm-hmm. And then I had to do 1 month of chemotherapy, which the best way I can describe this is, if any of your listeners have seen the show Archer, if you've seen the episode where Archer had breast cancer and he went into chemo all bravado and all confident, and then he just walked out all depressed and wanting to die, that's exactly what it feels like. So thankfully, I think I caught it early enough in time where it was that was a short amount of period compared to other fighters I know. But for 3 months, I had to do radiation, and it was getting up Monday through Friday, going to this clinic and putting on a lead, what they called a testicle shield. And it was 2 halves, and I had to put it on. The first time they tried, it pinched. So I said, nope, I'm going to do this myself from now on. But it was just more the tedium and just kind of it became second nature at a certain point. But at first I was just like, I'm really doing this right now, aren't I? I'm really stuffing all of this in this big lead shield and getting run through a machine.
That's crazy.
And through that, I had forgotten to register to graduate. So I had to I didn't want to pull the I had cancer card, but I had to. And thankfully, they made an exception for me.
That's awesome.
So that, I would say, is the kind of the first bout with it. And it kind of played to my decision to move to Boston after I graduated from San Diego State. So
let me ask you this. Why Boston? I mean, that's a beautiful city, one of my favorite cities. I don't like their teams, but it's a great city. So why Boston?
Oh, so funny you brought that up. So I'm finally going to explain the roots of this to people who've known me for decades. So in 9th grade, I was getting into the NFL, but I noticed at the time, your listeners are welcome to debate me, that there weren't very many Charger fans in San Diego. And we went back to school shopping, and you just buy whatever jerseys there. And my mom happened to buy a Drew Bledsoe jersey. And I mean, I picked it out, but that was part of my back to school shopping. and they happened to go to the Super Bowl that year and they lost. And I
that.
said, I think I'm going to be a fan of them. And then I fell back asswards into the greatest dynasty of all time.
So for our international audience, Tristan's talking about the New England Patriots, which is one of the most famous American football teams and are very popular. So it sounds like Tristan became a Patriots fan, right?
Yeah. Well, it's funny because you say popular, because as soon as I moved back, I quickly figured out how to get everyone in the room to hate me. Just tell them whose team I'm a fan of, because
I could see
just
that.
to go into it, they cheated a lot. And
Right. So you moved.
yeah.
So you moved to Boston.
And I did also feel like I needed to get away. This was all I knew, and I wasn't having a positive experience with the only friends that I had at the time, so I wanted a fresh start.
That's smart.
But the long story short, in terms of the big lesson of that, is it doesn't matter where you are if you have the same mindset, if you have the same kind of behaviors, lifestyles, exactly what you put out there, and that's exactly what you're going to get back. And I had to learn that the hard way.
Okay, good. That's a very good lesson. Okay.
Yeah. So a lot of what happened in Boston I have to go back even further to my childhood. So I'm born and raised in San Diego. I'm first generation Filipino. My parents met because my dad moved here through the Navy. He was stationed at 32nd Street and then retired here. My mom moved here from the Philippines, needed a place to stay. She was referred to my dad through a few sources, and then they moved in together, and then voila, here I am. So again, trying to be accountable, I just know that they weren't prepared to raise a child in the United States. They had raised, I'm the only child between them, but I have several half sisters and a half brother. But I know that once they got divorced when I was 3, that especially with that in mind, in the Filipino community at the time, you did not get divorced.
Sure.
So on top of all that, they had to be single parents in America in this community, and I just don't think they were prepared for that.
Sure. Yeah, that's tough.
My dad got remarried. Well, both of them got remarried, and then my dad basically, for lack of a better term, said, I have a new family now. Like, I was going to his house, and then that ended. And that really did strain my relationship. That was around age 10, and that was a very pivotal, come to find out, working with a therapist, that was the moment where everything kind of changed in terms of my behavior and kind of my outlook on life. And it was the term I kind of have to go with is anger. There was a lot of anger of feeling abandoned and let go, and really not finding the root of all of that and how it traced back to that single event.
Sure.
And it's weird because, we really figured this out lately, my therapist and I kind of pushed back and said, but I don't feel that towards my dad. When I go visit his grave, that's my hero now. I love the guy. Like, I've forgiven him. But he's like, but your body kept the score. So you get that same feeling, that same trigger. So if you've read that book, it really is true. Like, I have a great relationship with my parents now, but those same wounds, they play out in different ways. And that's where the yoga comes in, is where you regulate through breath, through meditation and mindfulness, which we'll get into later. And my mom, she dated and she had some boyfriends. And again, she had to play mom and dad, and she just, bless her, wasn't really prepared to do either. So I kind of, for lack of a better term, raced myself. And another big, deeper thing is, all I remember of the 3 years that my parents were together before they got divorced, or 6 years, I forget, was them arguing. And then all I remember from then on is her arguing with each of her boyfriends, and realizing that I took that on, that's how I learned how to treat my mother. And then how that translated into my relationships with women later on.
Sure, yeah.
And that kind of circles back to now of cultivating. My mom is my parent that I have left. And now that I moved out and we have that healthy boundary going over there. And thankfully, I have the rare Asian mom that doesn't want to just sweep everything under the rug. She is willing to talk about it. She's like, all right, let's talk about the past. Just don't talk about it. Don't get emotional about it and like process it. And she is willing to talk about stuff
That's
from
great.
her childhood. And I'm like, so do you see where this is a pattern? And she goes, yeah. So I'm very grateful because I've seen this with other men, that have these same issues. I realized lately that I have the mom now that I needed as a kid.
Sure.
So, and I really need to share this with your listeners. She changed her brain in her 70s because she sat there. She's a Christian, and she sits there in prayer for an hour. And one day I just asked her, "How long do you sit there?" And she said an hour. And I'm like, "You've been meditating." And I kind of had to explain the process. And I'm like, and I just noticed a lot of the behavior changes and the calmness and kind of the more mindfulness. And I really did realize she changed her brain meditating in her 70s. So
True.
there's this other, lesson between me and her that it's never too late, that you can get in your own way, that you can learn these incorrect behaviors. But once you learn the right ones and you consistently put them in, that you can always change.
Tristan, this is such a great message that I didn't know you were going to share today. But there are a lot of listeners right now, probably listening, who have had maybe similar relationships with their parents or things that they want to talk about. And you're very blessed, first of all, that your mom is open to talking about it. But I love the message you're sharing with our listeners, that it's never too late. And especially, having this relation with your mother now, already, this is one of my favorite part of what you're sharing with us. So thanks for sharing that with us today.
Oh yeah, and I mean I can keep going. Where I think the bigger lesson now that I'm working towards for myself is I, for lack of, I think I have a very David Goggins look in my life. I mean, look, I've lost a lot of weight, but this ability to look at the reality of my situation and be like, oh look, this is where you are. Thankfully, I've found sources that help me do that. And there was this, you became the man of your house at 10 and you didn't learn how to do that.
Sure.
So that kept this pattern where you never really prepared how to be the leader of your household, the man of the house. And now that I've identified that, I think the cancer and not being able to have biological children because of that became my out of like, great, that's God's way of saying, I don't need to have kids. I don't need to grow up. And I think there's just been this realization of, no, you're in a position now where you can take on someone else and be a father to them and learn everything and apply everything that you learned. And the way I say it and the way I'm kind of hoping this will impact your listeners, I'm 41. If someone in their 20s can hear this and I can spare them a few years of, suffering and getting in their own way, or giving yourself grace when you inevitably get in your own way, then it'll all be worth it.
So yeah, that's great. Let me ask you this. So you came back from Boston. Take us back to, what did it feel like when you came back? Take us to that part of the story.
I think there was still this delusion of, I was working in the corporate life. I did that in Boston. And okay, so when most people I left the corporate world to be a full-time yoga teacher or now like somatic life coach or something, I feel it always comes from this context of, I was so successful but unfulfilled. That is not my story. I was a fuck up behind that desk as an admin. Like, I mean, just a lack of attention to detail. We'll just call that the constant theme. But again,
what industry were you in, if I may ask?
So I wanted to go into education because I worked for the alumni at San Diego State, and I wanted to do the same in Boston, but they're just two different demographics that I just wasn't prepared for at the time. Then I switched to a different form of higher ed, then pharmaceutical, then nonprofit, then healthcare. And it was all, I'll get an admin job and then I'll figure out within the company what I'm going to do. And I never did. And again, being accountable, I think I could have taken a course on Excel pivot tables. Everything that I know now doing yoga in terms of breathing and staying mindful and not, I have unlimited access to the internet. I can talk to my friends all day. I think I would be more diligent and be a better admin now, but I'm just glad that's not the story anymore. So I moved back to San Diego and I got like what was my biggest admin job yet. I was an EA at this healthcare nonprofit, and know that I basically phoned it in. And I was doing it. I think there was this, I love the idea of the job and presenting myself as a successful corporate person, but deep down
Sure.
inside, never really appreciating it. That's why all of them ended on such bad terms. And this one ended on bad terms. And I had moved back here and I was living by myself. And there was just this feeling again of, wait, I moved back here triumphantly. Like I was done with Boston. I came home. I learned all the lessons. How did I let this happen again? And at that point, so I'll go into the yoga journey. In 2009, I went and took my first hot yoga class. I was going through a Buddhism phase, and that's how I'd heard about it through a Buddhist podcast. I sweated out like 20 pounds. Then that night and that afternoon, I was basically laying in bed, kind of shaking. And something said, you need to keep doing this, because I think there was always this self-conscious, I couldn't go to the gym and like really put in a good effort because of people watching me being overweight, and how being overweight was kind of portrayed during my college experience.
Sure.
And finding a yoga studio where I could just tuck myself away in this dark corner and just sweat, 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 and no one's paying attention to me. Within 6 months, I lost 50 pounds. So I had just been practicing and really keeping it as a workout, which is another part of the story. And after another failed admin job, I decided to do teacher training on the guise of, all right, let's see if I can go somewhere with this. And I was teaching sculpt to start, and this was in Boston. But and also in 2010, I went to massage school because there was also a, well, what if I don't want to sit behind a desk? So I was doing massage at the Massage NV in Cambridge, but they were side hustles because my support system was back here in San Diego. So
Sure.
I knew I could never make it work. So when I moved to San Diego, I tried to teach yoga at Core Power, and I think had the wrong mindset. I came in expecting to just, light the house afire and like be this big popular teacher, and it didn't work out that way. And I got in my head about it. So I stopped teaching. I had ultimately stopped massaging when I moved back. I just happened to bring my table back with me just in case. But after one more failed admin job, there was this, all right, I can't do this anymore. Like, I need to see if I can do this full time, and I will move back home. I'll go be, under the poverty line, but I cannot do this anymore. I'm going to see if I can make this work. So again, that was 2019, and started back at Core Power, went to Massage Envy, and just slowly built my way up. And then thankfully, I started at Yoga 6, which has been such an amazing
Yeah.
company to me.
The funny thing is, Tristan and I, for the listeners, we kind of met about 2018, 2019, and we both loved yoga. So he would, I remember this, Tristan, you would tell me about, leaving the corporate world, and you're like, I'm taking this new endeavor. I'm going to be a full-time yoga instructor. I'm going to be a full-time, doing massage on the side, and how you went from different studios. And it's been great for me because every time I see you, every, 3-4 months, you've kind of gone to the next level, and I can see the excitement and the impact that you made on your students and finding the right studio, right?
Yeah, I think, again, that's part of getting out of your own way, is getting rid of these expectations you have for yourself, because San Diego is this gigantic yoga community. There's actually more registered teachers in San Diego than LA. And we're all trying to sell ourselves and,
Yeah.
make our brand and get our following. And I think I wanted to, get all that too. And instead, not just, the way I put it was I wanted a class of 40 and I'd get upset if I didn't and wouldn't focus on the 10 that were there. And that's what I started doing was, all right, the 10 that shows up, let me connect with them. And
It becomes very
that's when getting rid of those expectations and letting it naturally happen, letting that abundance come in. And just the more you stop, you know, there's just been this theme of you put so much pressure on yourself to be accepted and to, find this sort of happiness in an external thing. And the more you kind of let go of that, the more it happens naturally.
It sounds like, I mean, to me, hearing your story with your family background, with you dealing with your abandonment issues with your father and everything going to Boston, sounds like, and I can see this in you because I see your posts, you're much more comfortable, or I wouldn't say in love, but yeah, in love with yourself. You're accepting of yourself. And that's very evident in me getting to know you the last 4 or 5 years. You're literally glowing in your business and your world and your yoga instructors and your competitions that you do, the videos you've sent. So it's a wonderful lesson for our listeners on just the different areas of life that really challenge you. And you didn't mention it, but you got cancer again the second time, because I don't think you mentioned it. So tell us about the second time that you found out you had cancer.
Yeah, so that was during the last failed admin job. I was at a previous gym training for a competition, and I took a testosterone booster thinking, well, I'm missing one, so this should help, right? And I honestly believe that's what contributed to the second one. So I cannot prove that, and I wouldn't want to take legal action at this point anyway. But I think also at that time, I had gone into this admin job, and in between, there was this long search that wasn't going well for the next job. There was the attempt to go full-time massage, but then I got this new job and going, all right, fine, I guess I have to do this. So I think, again, where my energy was, and specifically my attitude towards dating and relationships, and again, the pressure and kind of that energy blockage, I think all of that, just my own lifestyle and decisions kind of contributed to that, those healthy, unhealthy choices kind of contributed to those things.
Yeah,
So,
that's great. So let me ask you this as we start concluding. But it's an amazing story. Tell me, what is your message to cancer survivors, people who've had abandonment issues or conflict with their parents, or even people who are stuck in corporate jobs and their soul can tell it's the wrong place for them. But you've found this amazing new avenue and a new life. But what's your message to our listeners?
finally, it may take decades, but you start to understand why all of this was done for you and not to you. And you understand why you got cancer twice, why you gained the weight and then lost it, why you had to go through all of these things the hard way. And I think for me, the analogy I make now is my road to the top I was never supposed to be like the Patriots and having like a 14-1, almost unblemished record. I was supposed to go through hard losses, 9-7, sneak into the playoffs, and then put the run together late. And that's the point, is that when you put the run together late, as long as you learn from everything before, it's, especially now, 40, 30 years ago would have been like you're old already. Now, like, you're the new 20.
Yeah.
So that's the thing I want to say, is just the more you understand why this was all done for you, the more you can just get out of your way and just let everything happen the way it should.
Just like yoga, let it flow, right?
Yeah.
Very good. Well, listen, you've been a wonderful guest, and we will when I post this on YouTube, I will have Tristan's Instagram. And also for those of you who live in San Diego, if you want to take one of Tristan's class, or you want to maybe have him, he can be a massage therapist, please reach out to him. But, I was very excited to hear the story because really I've just seen you blossom the last 4 or 5 years. And it's just great to see how you have really reached the mountaintop, and you went through a lot. And my favorite part of the story today, honestly, was your incredible relationship with your mother right now. I think a lot of listeners are going to love the fact that you and your mother have this coming together, and now you're closer. So thanks again, Tristan. Anything you want to talk about tell our listeners about how do they, if someone wants to take your yoga class, tell us about, how they get a hold of you.
Yeah, so my Instagram is Tristan. That was amazing. It is that phrase, because how was your yoga class? How was your massage? So you can DM me there, and I can just help you get signed up for either one. And soon I'll have everything set up so you can book online and everything. But yeah, that's how you can contact me. But same thing to you. I'm seeing you blossom throughout our friendship together, and seeing kind of where your path has gone and how it's led to this avenue.
Yeah, I'm really excited. Thank you so much. Yeah, I really enjoy this, and it's just, you're my 7th guest, and hopefully this channel will grow. And for all the listeners, I know there's a lot of our Liverpool friends in the pub who are going to be listening to this, and many of them, when they see you next time, are going to come and give you a big hug. So thanks for being my first Liverpool fan guest on my show. So I'm really, really proud of that. Anyway, thanks everyone for listening. Again, thank you for being a part of the journey of The Voice of a Stranger. We will have another guest next week. But again, as I always say, remember, you never walk alone. Live your life with passion and be kind to each other. Thanks again.
Thanks for joining us this week. Please follow us on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook, or on your webpage at thevoicesofastranger.com. If you enjoyed the show, please tell a friend and subscribe to the show. Tune in next week for a new guest. Until next time, keep living life with passion and make each day count.